is pulling that apart. And so I think Juneteenth, while it is a symbol, and America, of course, will be commercialized because that's what America is a commercial where capitalism runs amok, is to be able for us to stand clear and to define exactly what Black culture is, and what freedom and liberation really look like. I think sometimes we use that language, and it has so many layers to it. So I'm excited to have this conversation with our peers here, and I am looking forward to the ongoing work. And lastly, I would say we are today raising an All Power to All People monument in Inglewood on Halsted as a declaration for Black spaces, since they have been under assault in cities like Chicago for a multitude of different reasons. One that Aislinn kind of pointed around police torture. There's also the kind of deep depravity in terms of the violence that is also committed in the village against each other. And those spaces of trying to heal the kind of traumatic experiences. So all of that are things that I think that while Juneteenth is being looked at as a celebration, is more of a remembrance and a reflection, and we must give way for the ancestors to kind of make that bridge to where we need to go. So I'll popcorn it back to Tamika, and then you'll get us kicked off.
Thank you so much, Anton and Danielle and Aislinn and staff for basically setting the tone for this event. I think that was really important too, to have that moment and just really like cultivate what this event is supposed to be and the experience that we're supposed to be providing. So I would actually like to invite Mike Straught to bless us with an interpretation of Juneteenth and Afrofuturism, for a quick departure from just everyone talking at all the participants. So Mike, go ahead.
Thank you very much. All right, and then ComEd would try to call me immediately in the midst of this, but we're ignoring them today. Love note to distant ancestors from 3017. Just work. While organizing papers in the Albert McKnight Historical Archive the other day, one apprentice craned their head in my direction, clearly frustrated by recent attempts to manipulate the BR digital imaging controller, and asked, "Why won't this thing just work?" Just work. Something so familiar about that phrase. I remember the voice of an ancestor 1,000 years gone calling after the same thing. I am a man. All I want is just work. On the other side was a white face flooded pink turning the same phrase. Well, that nigga would just work for what he gets like my people do. The world would be a better place. All these different turns on a single phrase, coming to such dramatically different conclusions. What is just work? Before we transformed our society based upon these precepts of cooperation, the Black Freedom Movement Memorial shows an entire historical arc wherein we tried time and again to reassemble ourselves in some equal or just manner. If we could smuggle the values in through moral suasion or diplomacy one last time, perhaps this thing will just work. Never a failure, only a lesson. We could not reach that promised land without the consent of every one of our fellow traveling companions ambling forward for justice together. There would be no just work that just worked. So we committed ourselves to being in relationship together on a field next door to the Carver Botanical Library. We refused to memorialize Allentown, Rosewood, or Tulsa in a manner blind to the types of tensions being held within the bodies of those communities. Our complete political history would now situate Booker T beside Marsha P. Ella would no longer need to hide her wrestling match with Martin beneath the cloak of subtlety and decorum. The National Council of Negro Women, with their Church hats were seen arm in arm with Gil Scott on 125th and Lenox, making small talk while a yam man peddled roasted goods in the reclaimed shell of a Starbucks. A harvest of our collective best minds executed the third reconstruction before we discarded this language as the skeletal remains of an American nation state being no longer useful. Trinidad and Tobago, August 1st. Martinique, May 22nd. Guadeloupe, May 27th. Suriname, July 1st. District of Columbia, April 16th. Florida, May 20th. Galveston, Texas, June 19th. Emancipation Day is a celebratory occurrence wherever we are and know ourselves to be free. In this Black liberated future, Emancipation Days persist for different reasons. We host forum theater reenactments with empathetic implants of the micro-migration from Davis Bend to Mound Bayou, and remember what it was like to ask Isaiah T. Montgomery why he accepted that job as an overseer. Leader is such an archaic concept. No one is above reproach. Though we have practiced the art of calling our folks in, we learned long ago that exile and isolation will only return us an enemy with even more toxic venom. We leaned our lives toward joy and dismantled violent work, violent economies, violent nations, and all the violent systems which caged our full and free potential. Juneteenth honors emancipation. I hope you are prepared to change everything. Do not constrain your imagination to the boundaries of this built environment. Marinage, Quilombo, liberated zones. Build something different from these ashes and embers, for the future I came from is far from certain. I'll pitch it back to you, Tamika.
Thank you so much, Mike. Wow. I mean, chills, shivers, reflections, celebration. I felt a lot of what you had to say in my spirit, in my soul, and my ancestors are celebrating with us as well. Your ancestors are celebrating with us as well. I think a lot of what we've been able to accomplish as a people, since our loved ones and those before us have gone on to ancestry, are very proud in this moment. So now I just want to do a little bit of shifting for the event and present a question to all of our speakers. And that question is, how do you view Afrofuturism as a lens for social justice? And I will hand it off to whoever would like to speak first. I can also call on
I
people.
guess I'll just go ahead and jump in.
Thank you, Anton.
Everybody's overwhelmed with the Juneteenth celebrations, I suppose. But I would just say the Afrofuturism lens for us, and the work that we're doing in Inglewood is really just positioning what does it mean to create Black spaces? What does community wealth building really mean beyond the fiat of money? And what is that? How does that connect back to our health, not just as individuals, but our collective and community health? So just really thinking about broadly and reimagining spaces that we occupy and what they may look like, and intertwining with our birthright, which is the earth takers of the world, the original earth stewards of the globe. So, part of that for us is, how do we create platforms for the imaginations to run as wild and as beautiful and magnificent as possible? And I think that without having to make those words, but to be able to craft, feeling, what it feels like when you walk in a canopy of trees, or when you hear the birds and the bees sing, when things slow down and then speed up. to me, all of that, represents the magnitude of the galaxy of Blackness. And then wiping clear what not to be confined by just our quote unquote Blackness, that our African roots, who we are as Africans, in this diasporic, that we're all interconnected. And that ultimately the human family and village needs our voices and are receiving our voices. We're an important part. So all of those things are guiding lenses around Afrofuturism, around rethinking about space and time. So I'll kick it off. And I guess now that we got the boat out here, who's next?
Well,
I'll go.
There we go.
I was going to say that when I think of Afrofuturism, I'm thinking of it as a genre. And so growing up, I did a lot of reading, and I used reading as my escape from whatever negative thing that was happening in my life at that moment. And books kind of helped me see how different people lived, and a window into this life that I could one day, create for myself if I wanted to. And so when I think of that in comparison to Afrofuturism, I feel like it gives us this chance to contemplate a future free from white supremacist systems, and a chance to create this new narrative of not only liberation, but also hope. And hope doesn't always have to look like just making it to the next day, or, the next year, or just simply being able to graduate from high school. Like, those aren't things that like hope. I want us to stop having like hope as this thing that we're just like, if I can just make it to the next moment, make it through this traffic stop. And for me in Afrofuturism, there are no traffic stops. Those things don't happen. And for me, another moment was, I distinctly remember when I saw Black Panther for the first time. And I had this moment of what we could have had if white supremacy hadn't been able to access our borders. I kept thinking about that. Like, every time the people would try to come to Wakanda, somebody would shoot them down, or there was no way to get through those borders. And what would a world that is devoid of those problems that have been created by systematic racism and oppression, what does that look like? And I'm hoping to see like more of that when I'm reading young adult fiction, or young adult fantasy, I should say, because that's probably where they would include Afrofuturism. But yeah, that's kind of my idea for it. I'm sorry, Ashley, you can go ahead.
No, don't be sorry. I was listening. It's in the similar vein. I wasn't thinking of it as a genre, but I love the term Afrofuturism because it reminds us that we have a future, right? And that in so many ways, to so many ancestors, we are that Afro future. So much about our lives, even the parts where we're still struggling, so much about our lives would have been beyond some of the, well, not even beyond. They are the wildest dreams of our ancestors, right? Just like the catchphrase says now. And so Afrofuturism just reminds me, the term Afrofuturism reminds me to plant, right? That we're moving in a direction toward a future for us that's, grounded in our history, but a future for us. And so that's what I think of when I think of Afrofuturism.
Yeah, Ash, thank you for that. And I'm just really kind of reflecting on the folks that we often encounter in our organizing. So as a Black organizer who often is engaged in spaces where we're connecting and really getting in motion other Black folks, right? Other Black folks who exist at the margins socially and economically of so many of our systems. And also recognizing that those lives often remain in constant negotiation from moment to moment, wherein kind of what we need to live with dignity remains in sometimes far out of reach, or in some cases just out of reach. And so as I think about an Afrofuturist lens. In essence, it invites us into a place and into a moment, into a space where we're able to dream, right? Where we're able to kind of envision a possibility in which our dignity is not